Yeah. The third wheel is really not a third wheel on podcast. It's kind of nice having that third person to bounce around.
That's right. I agree with that.
Man, I was just talking with a pastor that I knew from Calvary Chapel. He was actually one of the 40 pastors when I was going to Calvary Costa Mesa. I was trying to get him to come on here actually, because it's interesting that my past world, I don't think they really think about things the way that the Reformed folk, they don't have that methodology. It's simply teach the Bible. And I want to talk to him about what do you think about the plays that are being run with the coronavirus and things like that, because I got in a discussion with him on Facebook a little bit. And I said, it's not about the virus. And he said, maybe. And I was like, oh, you got to totally come on the show. And then Gavin Newsom laid down the hammer.
Oof, yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. But first, I got to say, welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. I am Matt Williams, co-hosted by the Reasonable, Rational Latino.
That's true. I am both of those things.
You are very much so. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Your videos have been fire lately. Really appreciate those.
Thank you. Well, hey, I appreciate it. I've been getting a little aggressive, but I think the time warrants it. To be honest, things have gotten crazy. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people that are like, I don't know what happened. Like my church went woke overnight. What do I do? And it's just like, I really don't have much for you besides pray your butt off and, find a church that won't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's two battles that we're fighting right now and trying to find a church. It's the woke crowd, and then the cowardly crowd.
That's right.
Or the cowardly churches. And those are like two very serious things.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, they don't line up completely evenly. Like, yeah, every woke church they're obviously not going to meet. I mean, that's a given, obviously. But there are a lot of churches that are otherwise good that are just not meeting.
Yeah.
What do you do? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in a second from a personal perspective. But first, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who supports us on Patreon, patreon.com/reformgelical. And the big hook for you to come support us, besides just, because you like us, was that you could watch this live. But the last couple of weeks, the new format, the new platform, we noticed that we were not getting the same amount of people attending. And so the last 2 weeks, we've kind of just blasted it to our social media sites. So a big thank you for those supporting. But I welcome to all of those who maybe don't usually listen to us live. You can chat wherever you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we will see your questions. So feel free to jump in on the conversation, and we might, stop what we're talking about and answer one of your questions. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I mean, I don't know if we ever I don't know if we always hit every question, but we definitely answered a bunch.
Yeah, it's definitely a great part of the show that we love. Sometimes you guys just go at it so much in your conversations, we just can't keep up while we're talking.
Totally.
It's a very hard skill. But you're more than welcome. Sean, hello. How are you doing? Thanks for saying hi. Watching on YouTube, we can see that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are live streamers that, they have those super chat things, and they do a great job just keeping up. And it's just I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, it's like reading a book and talking on the phone at the same time.
Right. You're talking and at the same time keeping an eye on the chat. It makes no sense to me, but good for you. Good for them. Good for them.
So, AD, I have some good news for you, or some news at least that's going to make you happy.
That's good.
Yeah, my family and I are going to go to our CREC Presbyterian Reformed Church next Sunday.
That sounds pretty Federal Vision to me, but tell me about it.
Yeah, I got my Federal Vision suit and my Federal Vision tinfoil hat, and I'm going to take it. I hope they know what I'm talking about, or it's going to be a really weird first introduction. But so my family, since we moved to Florida a year ago, have been going to a church that has been Reformed tendencies. They were part of, I think it was called something Covenant Grace. It was some kind of denomination or something like that, but then they became non-denominational shortly before we came. And they seemed to be pretty solid. Really liked what they were saying. No social justice stuff like we were talking about in the intro. But they shut down even without requirements. No, Cassia, I'm not going to baptize those babies yet. And we also get sidetracked by comments too, just to let you know that. They haven't said anything social justice. And so when the coronavirus thing came, they closed down like a lot of churches did, even though our state didn't mandate it.
Right.
Understandable. Okay. And they started to reopen about a month and a half ago. And the reason we weren't going when it reopened was because my baby girl was just born. We usually wait 2 months, right? So it's been that around that time. And we go to come back and they close down again from this new wave, quote unquote, of cases.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, even though that they're closed indefinitely, even if they closed for a week, it still would almost make me want to go to a new church just because it feels like they're not fighting the same battles that I'm seeing. Is that, what do you think about that?
It's, you know, it's so hard to know like what to say to you about this or to anybody because on the one hand, you can kind of understand someone who's believing the narrative because the narrative is literally everywhere. It's like it's being pushed everywhere. It's your grocery store, it's Walmart, it's every celebrity ever, it's every newspaper, it's everyone. So it's like, you know, I feel like I'm not like that in tune with the news. So like if I know that there's some discrepancies in what's going on here, I feel like most people should know that by now. But on the other hand, you want to have a lot of grace because it's like, well, you know, this is the zeitgeist. This is what everyone's saying.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, you know, I hate to take it away from your situation, but I'm going to for a second because I think this is helpful. Andy Stanley's like, well, we're not going to have church until 2021.
I saw that.
And it's like, okay, fine. So what is the logic between Andy Stanley, which everyone right now is saying is crazy, and pastors that are closed right now? Like, where's the logical line? There is none. There is no logical line. The only difference is that Andy Stanley's gone out in front of it because any church that's closed at this point could be closed until forever,
right.
You know, for all we know.
Right. Yeah. Why not? I mean, if the virus never leaves and there's always the risk, like what is the justification to reopen then? Right.
And what about the new viruses? And what about, you know what I mean? So it's just like, so why, honestly, to me, what I've been telling people is I don't blame you for looking for a new church because there is no reason to expect that this church will ever reopen ever.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it even more than just like, I want a place to worship. It's like, if my leadership that I'm supposed to submit to, and gladly do, I don't have a problem with submitting to leadership. But if you're not going to do the due diligence to actually do the research and actually take a deep dive on something this serious, like it's one thing to just agree like, oh yeah, the coronavirus is out there. It's a big deal. Like, okay. But if you're going to shut down church, you're going to take away worship, you're not going to assemble together, you better have all your ducks in a row. You have better done all of your due diligence. And just knowing that they haven't, and knowing that you're making these decisions at very least a superficial study of it. It's like, how am I going to trust you in any battles going forward? How am I going to trust you to lead me and my family going forward? And so just even that thought is making me just think like it's time to move on.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And the thing is, like, the other thing about it is that there's a difference between submission and letting someone make your decisions before God for you. So it's like, they've made it impossible for someone who's like, look, I see the statistics, I don't agree. Or even people that say, I do agree, this is the bubonic plague, but God commands me to worship. Like, you're making their choice for them. You know what I mean? It's like they don't even have an option right now unless they find another church. Yeah. So like the only option really that's a middle ground option is to stay open and to be open-handed about whether, because in a normal situation, if you had a church member, if you were a good church, if you had a church member that didn't show up for a year, you'd probably kick them out of the church in a normal situation. But in this situation, you could at least understand that. So the only middle ground here is to stay open and not require attendance.
Right. Yeah.
That's it. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to serve your entire congregation. It's really just that simple.
Yeah. And I think that, again, that's respecting the spheres of authority too.
Yes.
You're respecting the headship of the families.
Right.
And not undermining them, which today we need more than ever to be affirming the headship of the household and that whole sphere of authority because it's under attack in pretty much been decimated.
That's right. And this is another good reason to have a plurality of elders, because if you have an elderly elder that, is at risk, he's got a immunodeficiency disorder. Okay, great. Maybe he shouldn't be at the church. But you've got other elders that are young and strong, and if they get the coronavirus, it's no big deal. They can go to the church and they can handle things at the time. So like there's things that can be done. So to me, shutting down is just not acceptable at this point at all. Like there are other things that can be done before you just shut down. It just isn't acceptable anymore. I just don't get it.
Yeah, definitely indefinitely.
Especially considering all the data that's not only was the data bizarre from the beginning and incomplete, but now there's like all this data of like fake cases that, like it's just so confirmed that there's been so many fake cases, so many fake positives, and even the real positives, we don't even really know if they are positive because the test is only a certain percentage accurate or whatever it is. I saw some studies that were saying it's like almost like a coin flip, whether if you test positive, if you really have it or not.
Oh,
it's just like, what's going on here?
I know.
Yeah, there's a new surge, but like all the data is inaccurate.
Yeah. And the thing is too, just from data perspective, and we're not going to get into this too much because data is super boring, right? But even if the data was 100% accurate,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Right. And it's getting better. The more cases and the less deaths mean the death rate is shrinking more and more. Isn't that the whole point?
Matt, I'll never forget this for my whole life, because I have a vision of you and me speaking here and saying, look, the death rate, we don't know what it is. And by the end of this, it's going to look very similar to the flu, perhaps even less than the flu. And the best part is it doesn't kill the kids. So that's great, because I like to protect my kids. You know what I mean? That's fantastic. But the flu kills the kids. So it's like the flu is way worse than this. I remember us saying this months ago. And people, you're crazy. You're a science denier. And now that it's coming out that, the death rates are pretty low, like very low, very comparable. And people are like still closed down. So I guess I remember I made a stupid video. I was just being a moron. I thought I was being an idiot. I had my stupid glasses on. I had that stupid mask on. And I was like, well, we should have church season. Every flu season, we shut down church for 4 months, and then we'll come back. It'll be a season, just like in baseball. You know what I mean? I'll never forget this stupidity that I've spouted out. But now, how could you deny that, Art? That's what we all have to do now. Because this thing is not as bad as we thought it was, and we're still shut down. So how can we ever reopen during flu season again unless we hate our neighbor? Unless we're going to disregard the 10 commandments. So if we're going to disregard the 10 commandments, and then when it's not the corona, when it comes to the flu, then we're just all a bunch of heathens. We have no idea what we're freaking talking about.
Yeah,
church season.
We're opening the door for the victory of the next battle. And although the woke battles and the social justice woke battles, and this is different, they're not really the same. The plays and the strategies are the same.
So similar, yeah.
And just like I saw an article yesterday where it said the statues are not enough. Oh, it was about the Asheville reparations bill that passed in Asheville, North Carolina. They voted 7-0 for reparations to Black people. Yeah, and the reasoning was that tearing down statues wasn't enough. We needed to do more. And I just think that is such a giveaway line for the play, because statues were everything. It was symbolic. It's it's the middle finger to the Black community. They all need to come down. And it was the biggest thing in the world. And if you didn't support it, you were a racist. And if you didn't support it, you were part of the problem. And then it's like, oh, now that we got that, we won that victory. That's not enough. Now we need reparations and the whole thing again. Just like with mask, it's the whole thing. You're hating your grandma. If you don't wear it, you're hating, you're not being loving, you're not loving your neighbor. And then it's church, and then it's not singing. So what's next? It could be the flu next by all the same logic, right?
Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? The flu is extra scary. The flu spreads easier than coronavirus. It kills children, which is way scarier than coronavirus. And the death rates are comparable. Well, you know what I mean? Like this is the reality. So of course that's the next play. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
The whole point is these people want you all poor. Like you don't understand. These people are sick. They're twisted. They want you all poor so that you start supporting the universal basic income.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they want you not to have a job. They want you not to have to have restaurants to go to and stuff like that. They don't want that because they don't have it. They don't want anyone to have it. These people have degrees in like feminist studies. They don't make any money. They want you to be just as miserable as they are. That's what they want. They're sick. These people are absolutely sick. And we're just going, well, love your neighbor. Like a bunch of morons. Like, honestly, it's just so sad. Honestly, today I went out to the grocery store right before dinner. I had to pick up a couple items. And I've been bragging about my fellow New Hampshire brethren about how most people don't wear masks. I was shocked. Today I saw everyone had a mask except for me and this one girl. We looked at each other. We were like, what's up? You know what I mean? Yeah, they got the nod. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's right. There was me and this one girl. We were not wearing masks. I was looking around like, what has happened? I thought we were the live free or die state. What is going on here? I bring them. And the sad part is I bring a mask everywhere I go because, look, if I'm in somebody's store and they insist that I wear a mask and I want to buy something from them, that's their property. They can do whatever they want. You know what I mean? So I walk in the store, no mask. And if they say, hey, you need to wear a mask in here, I put it on if I need the store. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But it's like, I just don't get it, man. I just don't get it. After everything we've been through, after everything we've seen, after everything we've heard and found out was a lie. Oh, that one medicine doesn't work. And it turns out it really does work. Everything that they told us is a lie. Yeah. And now we're like submitting more than ever. I haven't looked at like the fear porn in a long time. Like I haven't looked at a map. I haven't looked at any of the curves, the infection curve. I haven't looked at Drudge Report in a long time. I looked the other day, just like a week ago or something. Yeah. And I was shocked. People are still talking about, oh yeah, the big death wave is still coming. They've been saying that for 4 months. For 4 months, the big death wave is coming. It's going to come. Just trust us. Oh and it's like, my goodness. And people are saying this is going to end November 3rd when the election's over. No, it's not. No, it's definitely not going to end then. No, it's not. If that's what your hope is, that finally when Trump doesn't get elected, that it's going to end. No, it is not. They know that this works. They know that this gives them more power, and it will not end then. Definitely not.
Yeah, they've been victorious this whole time.
They've not lost.
Why would you stop?
Battle. Right.
Like, how have they lost? Why would you stop if you don't? It's like, I'm so tired of winning. That's like a Trump line. You're going to win so much, you're going to get tired of winning, or however he said it back in the day.
It is like a Trump line.
They're actually doing it. And so if Biden wins, the government is just going to full scale grab even more. It's going to be like the supermarket sweeps back when you had like a minute to grab anything you wanted in the aisle. They're just going to be grabbing our rights left and right. Or if Trump wins, he's going to be impeached over coronavirus somehow. It's not going to stop.
I can see Biden like, I'll take that one, and just dump it in their carts.
Oh, I need 3 turkeys.
Yeah, no. Why would they stop? There's no reason to. What? Because there's a Democrat they're going to want to stop? No, they're not. Mm-hmm. They don't care about that stuff. They don't care because they know that they haven't lost a single thing. If anything, people are getting more scared as the danger subsides. Yeah. Like I'll tell you, like Matt, I don't think that I'm not ashamed of this. Like in the beginning, there was a lot of unknowns, and I was never paralyzed with fear, but I was nervous at going to the store and stuff like that. I was washing my hands a little more. I was being a little more careful because everything was unknown. It was new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the data started rolling in. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this. This is maybe like a week later. I was like, I'm not doing this. Yeah. And then everything that's come out since has told us that there is no reason to worry. It's less worry every day. Every piece of data that comes out, you see from Sweden, from everywhere. Every piece of data that comes out tells us, yeah, it's totally fine for kids to go back to school. Everything's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And somehow people are more racked with fear now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
So why would they stop? They got you.
Man, it's so demonic. It's demonic. Narratives that are just being portrayed and advocated for, and what the results are for the public. It's so sad.
It's so sad.
I was just looking at actually the data between Sweden and New York. And it's funny. Do you remember back in the day, like in the beginning, when they were talking about the 2-week shutdown? We're only going to shut down for 2 weeks.
15 days to slow the curve or slow
the curve because the healthcare industry would be overwhelmed. And they gave us 2 bar charts. And I don't remember. And I remember this because I'm a data nerd. I'm a data guy.
Yeah.
The first curve was if we do nothing. Let me see if I can get on my camera. And it was a very like steep, high bell curve, right? And then with the 2-week shutdown was a longer, like kind of a hill curve.
Yep, I remember.
And so we had to shut down or the big steep curve was going to happen. Well, it turns out when you compare the curve in New York versus the curve in Sweden, where New York did everything. They went to the extreme. They shut down everyone. They put the COVID patients in the retirement homes. They did everything the statists wanted you to do.
Right.
And they ended up having exactly what they were trying to avoid. Then you go over and look at Sweden's curve. They did the opposite of what everyone was trying to get them to do. They didn't shut down. They left it to individuals to do what they thought was best in social distancing. And it was almost exactly the same curve that they thought was going to be achieved from 2 weeks. And so when you see this data coming out now that the statists can't even achieve what they're trying to, and when we actually respect people's rights, like Sweden did, it is doing what they hoped for. How can you take anything they say seriously anymore? Like, honestly, the data is just not there.
I'm not the kind of guy who ever like says, that likes to trot out scientists and to prove my points. Cause I think scientists are a bunch of liars most of the time. But I saw a meme or a tweet the other day that it blew my mind. Cause it just put it so well. It's like, you either believe the science or you don't. Like if you're gonna throw the science in my face all day to get me to do what you want to do, the minute that the science doesn't agree with you, you still have to believe it. You either believe it or you don't believe it. Otherwise, you're just an idiot. And that's what's going on right now. All the science is saying, we should go back to school. Listen, I don't want you to go back to school ever. But what I'm saying is, like, all the science is saying, the students should go back to school. And we're still hearing, no, it's way too dangerous, way too dangerous. So what's the deal here? It's all ideology. It's the same thing with the social justice warriors. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what Bible verse you show them. It doesn't matter anything. It's just it's the narrative, and that's it. They've been told what to believe, and they're going to believe it. Everything else be damned. Everything else be damned. That's why you could say a Bible verse to an egalitarian or a homosexual or a social justice warrior. You can tell them a Bible verse that literally directly contradicts what they just told you, and it has no effect on them. They don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so frustrating. 80, we're getting called out here. Barry wants to know what our solutions are. We're light on solutions right now. So let's just go down the list.
What is that? Wait. So, solutions for what?
I don't know. Probably all the things we talked about. So there's different spheres of authority. Yeah, I think so. That was a comment from 7:50. What time is it right now? Yeah, it was like 10 minutes ago. We've been on this rant for 10 minutes.
Hey, Barry, the solutions are what they've always been. And we talk about this all the time. And Matt was about to say it. It's sphere sovereignty. And so God gives the family, the individual, the church, and the state different areas of authority. And so if the government doesn't have the authority to do something from the scripture, it doesn't have it at all. And that means either the church has it or the individual has it or the family. And so here's the solution. Everyone mind your own business. And if I want to wear a mask, I'll wear a freaking mask. And if I don't want to wear a mask, I won't wear a mask. It's just that simple. That's the solution. It's very, very simple. Respect the sphere authority, because if you start giving the government powers to do all kinds of things like canceling worship services, like saying you can't sing at church, like all this kind of stuff, the minute you do that, the whole apple cart is upset, and they will never, ever, ever be satisfied with little, things that you give them. They'll take it all. They'll do the Newsom. They'll pull the Newsom. It's like the minute you say, okay, Newsom, we won't meet for 2 weeks to slow the spread, the next second he's like, indefinitely. Yeah. And once you go back, you definitely can't do communion. And also once you go back, you definitely can't sing. It's way too dangerous, because you got to love your neighbor as yourself. Instead, the solution is mind your own damn business, Newsom. Mind your own business, because this is not your business. That's the solution. So it's not the kind of solution that a statist would like to hear, because a statist solution is, well, what does the state do? The state doesn't do anything. That's the solution. They stay out of it. And it frustrates me to no end, where it's like, what's the solution? Because the answer they want is, what should the government do? And that's thinking the wrong way. Right. There is no actual solution. It's just respecting what God tells you to do. Take responsibility for your own. Look, when my kids were sick during regular time before coronavirus made everyone all insane, when my kids were sick during the flu season, we didn't go to church. Because we're responsible adults and we respect sphere sovereignty and we're not idiots. So it's like, okay, my kids are sick. I don't want to make people at church sick, so I don't go to church. By the way, if my kids are sick and I'm not sick, I go to church and my kids don't. But look, this is not complicated. It's like we all knew what to do before coronavirus when people were sick. If you're sick, you stay home. If you're not sick, you go about your business. You don't need the government to tell you what to do. You don't need your pastor to tell you what to do. My pastor never, ever once told me, here's the thing, Adam. If your kids are sick, you're not allowed to come to church. It never had to be said. You know why? Because he respects your sphere sovereignty too. He knows that I can manage my own family. And if he thought I couldn't manage my own family, we would have had a talk a long time ago. And I'm sorry I'm getting heated. Actually, I'm not sorry. I'm getting heated because this is so simple and we're acting like we don't know how to do this. And yet 6 months ago, everyone knew how to do this. Everyone. We didn't need the government to tell us, hey, it's flu season. And, so if you have symptoms of flu, flu-like symptoms, that's what they always called it, flu-like symptoms. If you have flu-like symptoms, then because you're an adult and we recognize that you are an adult and you have your own sovereignty, then take responsibility for yourself and your family like an adult. When I go to church, I wasn't worried about people coming in having Ebola. You know why? Because if somebody had Ebola symptoms, they probably wouldn't come to church. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, those kinds of well, what's the solution? It's just like, I'm sorry, but you just don't get it, right? The solution is to mind your business. And I don't mean that in like a spicy way, but like literally that's what everyone should do. Mind your business. If you're a pastor, mind your pastoring business. If you're a family man, mind your family. If you're a civil governing authority, mind what God gave for you to do. And what he gave for you to do is to punish evildoers and to promote what is good. That's it. Yeah. End of rant.
Amen. And it's just as weird as any one of us in the church, as the head of our families, telling the church what to do and having the church listen to us. It's like the pastor isn't going to come into our sphere and tell us how to do things. And it's mind your own business. And it's, let the spheres do what is their responsibility according to scripture. And we've been very consistent on this from the beginning. We were all saying we shouldn't shut down the economy because that's not their business. The government has no right to tell a business, to tell a family what they can buy and sell and what they can do with their property or what they should do from a health perspective, as long as it's not quarantining the sick. We would said, hey, there is biblical precedent for that. But you have no authority to quarantine healthy people because God didn't give you that authority. And the solutions are really simple and easy to us because we read our Bibles and we look to the Bible as our foundation. It gets complicated when we're going through the whims of what should the government do and how should they do it. It's like this weird, should they be socialist or fascist problems to be solved or solutions.
And the thing is like this, like that's not an acceptable answer to a lot of people, but you got to realize that some things have no solutions. Like ultimately, like, okay, so we might not be able to eradicate coronavirus from the earth. Okay. That's a fact of life. I mean, we've dealt with flu for decades, way more than decades, but I've only been alive for a few decades and we've dealt with it for a few decades and we haven't been able to eradicate it. And somehow life goes on. Somehow we knew that we didn't have the right to force our friend to wear a stupid piece of cloth over their face. You know what I mean? Like somehow we remembered that before, but now all of a sudden it's like, it's a mystery. Well, what do we do? And the only reason it's a mystery, the solutions are a mystery to anybody, is because you've been told that the solutions are a mystery. You've been told that it's super complicated and like, well, wait a minute, I don't know. Maybe we can't go back to work unless there's a vaccine. I don't know. Maybe we can't go back to church until there's a vaccine. Like the fact that that's even being talked about is completely insane to me. That's insane. Mm-hmm. Why don't you mind your own business and I'll go to church if I decide that it's time to go to church. How about that? And that's the whole point. So it's like, there might not be a solution that ends up with the right, like the right answer. It's not like a video game where you either win or you lose. Like we might have to just deal with this forever. Forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was thinking about where, was it David who had the option between 3 different judgments by God? Was that David? And then he picked the one where God was actually the one implementing it. But there wasn't like a solution to get rid of it. Right. He still had to endure it. And there's things in our lives that we're just going to have to endure and tolerate. But but we need to also at the same time, even though we might not have a solution to get rid of it, there's still a proper way to respond to please God in it as well.
Amen. And ironically, that's what God says he'll bless. So God will bless when you obey him. The solution is to obey God. And that's what sphere sovereignty is all about. It's not like a political ideology, although it ends up being that. It comes from the Bible. Like, just don't look, if you're a governor, don't do what God says you shouldn't do and do what God says you should do. If you're a family man, same thing, So God promises in his book, in the book, it says you do these things and things will go well with you. I won't like he lists a bunch of plagues and pestilence and stuff like that when you disobey him, but he also lists a whole bunch of blessings that'll happen to you when you obey him. That's the solution. That's it. All we got to do is mind our business before God, mind our authority that God gave us, and stop worrying about everybody else. Like have you seen these videos, Matt, where someone will like, why aren't you wearing a mask? Wear a mask, and they'll like film it and put it online. Those videos are so pathetic. They're so sad and so pathetic. But that's the opposite of what I'm advocating for. What I'm advocating for is mind your own business. That's it. That's the solution.
And it's more than just a pride thing too. And I just want to say, Barry said, thanks for engaging. Love the passion. We called him out on his pushback, and he's appreciates it. So thanks, Barry, for listening. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the question. And listen, it's not personal. I hear that a lot. And it's just like, well, because I know what you're looking for, but it's not the right, it's not, in my opinion, it's not the right question. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so the importance too of mind your own business and the respecting of the spheres is that it's not just us saying, like, leave us alone, but there's actual consequences to not doing it, where people start acting in ways they shouldn't. They start getting rid of responsibility. You think of like the Stanford prison experiment, where they had the college kids, some were prisoners, some were prison guards, and they took on those roles without even being told. And they ended up acting just like prisoners or just like prison guards. So too in business, they teach us, like, if you don't give your direct reports or employees autonomy and the ability to make the right decisions, well, then they're always going to look to you to make decisions for them. And you're always going to have to micromanage them. Right. And so too, if the state is always supplying your every need and making your health decisions, making your healthcare decisions, making your food choices and all of these things, well, then your muscles of independence and responsibility and headship are going to shrink and shrink and shrink, which does damage. This is a very real problem. And there's really very real consequences of the spheres not staying in their proper place.
Well, Matt, we have an example directly related to coronavirus that is a good lesson for this, because basically everyone at this point, and if this was you, understand this was everyone. We're all basically looking to the government to tell us how dangerous this is, what to do and how to respond to it. And there were, I don't know, hundreds or maybe even thousands of souls in New York that were doing that exact thing. And what the governor said was, "Oh no, go to the nursing home. That's the solution. That's what you do. It's science." and they lost their lives because of that.
Yeah,
they lost their lives because of that. And so, like, it's not like hypothetical, right? There's real world consequences here when you're constantly looking to the government and trusting the government to tell you what's what. They're going to make mistakes because they're humans, right? And who knows what other agendas they have at play? I don't know. But the point is, like they're really not responsible for those kinds of decisions for you.
And they're not good at it.
They're not good at it. Right.
There's like this fallacy that we have, and I don't know where it came from. It should never have been an American perception that the government is supreme, that they have all the brightest minds, that they have all of the answers, and they don't.
Right. And even if they did, this is the other thing, because even if they did have the brightest minds, they still would be terrible at it, because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's everyone. So this is the example I was using back during the beginning of coronavirus. I was thinking to myself, okay, someone was trying to zing me. They were like, "Well, what are you saying, Adam? If we had an Ebola virus, would you say the same thing?" And I'm saying, yeah, I would. And here's why. Because if I'm in my own life, I have stores of food in my house. I could probably survive for a few months, right? just without leaving my house and all of that. So I'd be fine. And if we had Ebola outside, I probably wouldn't go outside too much because it's too dangerous, and I'm not psychotic. I don't want to die. I don't want my kids to die. So I'd take reasonable precautions. I wouldn't go to the stores because I have food myself, and I'd be fine. But that's very different from saying, because I'm in that situation, the government should ban going outside. Because here's the thing. There are people that aren't like me and weren't prepared for it. And so they might have to risk it, because it becomes the difference between, okay, my family's going to starve if I don't risk going outside and contracting Ebola, because I got to get to the store and get some food. So my family might starve. So all of a sudden we make our own decision. We're like, it's risky, but I need food. And so when the government decides it's too dangerous to go outside, and so you are banned from going outside, like many governments did, they're it's not that they're stupid. It's that it's impossible for them to know what's right for you. It's impossible. No matter how smart they are, they can't know it. And so it just so happens that they're also not smart. But even if they were, it wouldn't matter, because they would have to know God-like information about everyone's situation at all times. And it's not possible for anyone except for God. And so that's why you and me would say, this is why you obey God, because he actually does know everything. He knows about everyone's situation, and he commanded certain things.
Right. And it's interesting too. That's a really good point I was thinking about, is like, no matter what you do at the presidential level or congressional level, federal level, even state level to some extent, no matter what decree you say, if everyone followed it, some people will be harmed by it, some people will be hurt by it, and others will not.
That's right.
But when you think about God's decrees, that is not the case. That if we as a people would just obey him, it would work out well for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very interesting way to put it. And you're right. I mean, when we start making up our own laws, it's very difficult, and I would say impossible, to make up your own law without referencing the scripture that's going to actually be good for everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought I saw this story. It was my very own Florida. Speaking of the incompetence of the government, that there are labs reporting 100% positive rates for the coronavirus. And there was another one. Let's see. The report showed Orlando Health, which is one of the hospitals down here, had a 98% positive rate. And the local news, thankfully, the local news isn't as crazy as the national news. I don't know why, but they actually still do some reporting. They questioned that. And it turns out the positive rates were 9.4%. So that is the competency of government, where we can't even get testing right. And we talked about it.
What's amazing about that is that it's not a number like 70%, 76%, 33%. It's 98 point something. So it's over 98% positive rate. Yeah. And nobody in the government was like, that doesn't sound right. Like, maybe we should, before we publish this, maybe we should check.
Yeah.
And
those are the minds making decisions for everybody.
Those are the minds making decisions, right? Yeah. It really beggars belief that nobody was thinking, no, it can't be.
I know. And it goes back to the point that you were just saying too, is like the consequences. You can't really know everyone's situation. And that's why, and like, we don't need hypotheticals about this. That's why suicide rates are skyrocketing.
That's right.
That's why we have such high unemployment.
That's right.
Because we're listening to the government supersede its authority and overextend itself in doing things it should not. While if we just listen to biblical authority and we just listen to the biblical principles on how to handle these things, we know what we would get. We actually see it in Japan. They had 850 deaths, and they just ended their national emergency over it. 850 deaths. Sweden has a positive GDP growth for the first quarter. Positive GDP growth. And see, even though that even now, like, death rates are higher in some of the neighboring countries, the overall destruction is so minimal when you take into effect everything else, the second and third effects. And if we would just learn the lesson, I mean, this is a great opportunity for us to sit back and examine ourselves and think through how we need to handle these things in the future, because we have the contrast. We have people listening to the biblical way of doing things and the ones who didn't, even if they didn't know they were doing the biblical approach. And we have the perfect examples. We're seeing how incompetent our government is. We see the rights they're taking away. And we need more than just podcasters talking about this. We need every single pastor preaching on this. We need every pastor asking these questions, talking about it to the congregation, getting the church educated so that we have a response, because it's been lackluster at best.
I think, yeah, you're 100% right. And it just really boggles the mind, to, at this point, like this is where we started the conversation, where it's like, at this point, knowing everything we know, seeing all the stories from around the world and all the discrepancies in the data and all the lies that we've heard at this point, to still have pastors not doing that. And instead, well, maybe they are doing it on Zoom, but probably not if they're on Zoom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I honestly, like, one reason that I will walk into a store without a mask, I'll be honest, is like, I want to be the guy that's not projecting the same fear as everybody else. I want people to understand that it is okay to just walk into this store and not be scared for your life, right? And to not be doing what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? Look, if this is Ebola or if this was something else, I would wear a mask. I'm not a moron. You know what I mean? Right. I'm not stupid. Like, I don't want to die, but it's not that. And I live in freaking New Hampshire, which barely ever had, I don't even know how many infections that we had at our peak, but it wasn't a lot. Right. that curve that said this is the day that you're going to have no more ICU beds, that came and went, and we didn't even get to half that. You know what I mean? No. Of course it did. Of course it did. And so, like, knowing that, I want people to know that, like, it's okay to look at that emperor and say you don't have any clothes on. Right. Like, it's just so insane at this point. So yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. It's people would call it a rebellious streak. No, I think it encourages people to see, oh yeah, I don't have to be that scared of this. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's a lot of camaraderie when you see someone else without a mask. It really is.
I know. It's like when you're driving a motorcycle, you see someone else in a motorcycle, you always wave. If you don't have a mask on, you always wave.
Absolutely. Or like boats or boaters and stuff. Same thing.
And it's not like we're even denying science. Like, science is even on our side. It turns out that it's up to 99% ineffective to wear a cloth mask, but somehow that's appropriate. Like, I was listening to one doctor. I forgot where I heard this from. The equivalent of wearing a cloth mask to keep a virus like out from spreading to you or spreading to someone else is like trying to trap mosquitoes with a chain link fence. That's the difference in size between a virus and the threads in a cloth mask.
A more litigious person might be able to make some money because they've heard all this cloth mask going to save you, and really doesn't. So if you catch coronavirus, you might make a little money there.
Oh, I know. Seriously. And then also with the hydrochloroquine. Yeah. Well, you talked about it a little earlier. The death rates actually spiked from doctors stopping to prescribe it because they were listening to the narratives. But it turns out, Trump was actually getting that from medical science, and it was helping people. And so when they went back to it, the death rates went down again. There's some lawsuits for you.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what that hydroxycut thing. So I heard Trump say it, and Trump says a lot of things. So I never take what he says for face value. But then when I saw the response about it, I knew that was insane. And I was like, oh, that drug probably works. Mm-hmm. That drug probably works because there's no reason for these idiot governors to ban it. You know what I mean? They're like, that makes no sense. So that drug probably does work. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, it does. And to this day, people are going to deny that drug works. To this day, they'll deny it. And I just don't understand why. And even if it turns out that the drug doesn't work as well as Trump was saying or something like that, all I needed to know was that these people were against it at this point. You know what I mean? Like, that's all I really needed to know. But the point is, the hydroxycut aside, is that Christians ought to be willing to be matter of fact about a lot of this stuff. And the problem is that so many pastors in our country have, instead of really doing the work and thinking about what they're responsible for versus what the government's responsible for and what the Word of God actually says about that, instead, they've bought this lie, essentially, that love your neighbor as yourself is whatever progressives say it is, mm-hmm. with a few minor exceptions. abortion and LGBT stuff, barely.
Those
are the minor exceptions. But don't you dare call LGBTism what the Bible calls it. That's not loving your neighbor as yourself. Don't you dare actually say that abortion is what the Bible says it is, and that the penalty should be what the Bible says it is. That's not loving your neighbor as yourself. So it's like they're barely right on those things.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, let's just face it. So many pastors are basically exchanging what the Bible says about love your neighbor for whatever progressives are pushing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, because I heard a Christian literally told me that the hydroxycut thing. This is why I was thinking about this. If I supported hydroxycut for coronavirus, that I wasn't loving my neighbor as myself, because people that have lupus need that disease. I have lupus. How dare you reduce the supply? I need that to live.
Uh-huh.
And I was just shocked. I'm like, are you insane?
Yes.
Yes, he is insane. Absolutely.
Yes, he is insane.
And this is one of those liberal Christians. He's been liberal for a long time, of course. But
yeah,
whatever whatever Pelosi's saying, that's love your neighbor as yourself. I guarantee you, basically without fail, whatever Pelosi says, you can find a hot take on Gospel Coalition about how that's loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, they'll probably send some poor intern to write about it, or maybe that's the ERLC that does that.
Do you remember that was the first thing we ever did on coronavirus? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That intern who was
the Chinese food.
Yeah, so they abandoned that narrative a long time ago. That was the initial narrative, like you can't be racist against Chinese people. That they abandoned that. They dropped that like a hot potato.
Yeah, they did. You were bringing up the soft on abortion and soft on LGBTQ things. And it's just funny because I'm thinking back of just the churches I've attended. You don't really hear sermons about it that much. You don't hear sermons against the cultural accepted like principles, idols, whatever you want to call these things. And that really gives way for them to do the things they're doing today. It's like if the church would have stood firm and preached out against those things back in the 90s, 80s, whenever that hot debate was happening. I guess it's been happening for a while, but there was like really a time where it was. And it seems like the church kind of just gave into society, into culture, and said, oh, we're not supposed to talk about those things. Oh, we can't do too much about politics. We might lose our 501c3 status. And we kind of just tamed our preaching down to make the culture happy, which kind of just set the foundation for them to tell us to stop singing and worship. Right. Like you cannot say those things aren't connected.
They're definitely connected. There's no question about
right. That. Which makes it even more like just infuriating to see just the progression and where we are today. It's like we need to get back to standing for something. Look
at this picture, Matt.
Oh no. What picture?
I sent you the link to it in the chat.
Oh, you send me into private chat? Okay.
Oh, I can't.
Oh, it's a link.
I can never post in the live chat.
Why can't you do that?
I don't know. Look at that shirt. They're selling that.
Listen, lament, and legislate. Jude 3 project.
That's
It's
a woke apologetics. But this guy looks so happy. He's just living the good life, man.
They cropped it off, but he's actually running over white people.
You said it. I didn't. Listen, lament, legislate. The 3 L's.
Yeah.
I can't order your shirt. Should I get one of these?
You should wear it on one of your shows. That'd be hilarious.
Listen, lament, legislate. I'm not buying this. You gotta be crazy. You gotta be kidding me. Oh wow. Sorry to distract you like that.
Yeah, no, that's
they
good.
They got a whole line. They got mugs. They got it all.
Get your memorabilia while you can.
This is actually a good one. This is the same organization has a shirt that says viral does not equal valid, which is so ironic coming from a social justice warrior.
Right. Oh my goodness. Obviously they don't have a blue check mark. One of the things I saw this week with the fighting against the face mask things was the OC school board, which is my hometown. I don't know if you knew this. I grew up in Orange County, California.
I did know that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I did. For everyone else, I grew up in Orange County, California, which used to be pretty conservative county, actually. It was where all the LA conservatives had to work but wanted to live somewhere that was not crazy. So they would live in Orange County and commute up to LA. The school board approved a 4-1 vote where the schools are going to reopen without requiring social distancing or wearing masks, which shouldn't be surprising because all of the science says that kids aren't at risk. But there they are in the most liberal of states.
Impressive.
OC School Board. And I actually did a show on this for how to build a tent, where I was encouraging people that if you feel overwhelmed about, not being able to influence politics, you don't have billions of dollars to be a mega donor in the national level, like you can have an impact on the school board level. You can have impact on a mayor's race, and you could stand up for sanity, even in a crazy place like California. But the second thought I had that was really depressing to me is there are governments that are standing up to the government better than the churches. Like the Orange County School Board is standing up to Gavin Newsom more than most churches are in California.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
And then what does Romans 13 crowds do in Orange County? Do they send their kids to school with social distancing or face mask, or do they submit to the governor? Well, which authority do you obey?
I guess you just have to do both somehow. Otherwise,
Two-Face.
Otherwise, you are just a scofflaw. You're just a rebel. You're breaking the fifth commandment.
Yeah, you're not loving your neighbor. That's for sure. And I bring this up just simply because it gets so confusing when you are obeying things that you ought not to, when you don't have a foundation in the Bible. But for us, it's clear that we don't submit to the government in these cases, that we don't need to, that it's not their authority. And so when we see this, we don't have a problem with it because we know Gavin Newsom's insane. And we weren't going to obey him anyways. We're going to sing in church because God commanded it. We're going to meet in church because God commanded it. And if we, for some reason, have our kids in public school, I don't know why we would. But when they say don't wear a mask, it's like, good. They weren't anyways.
Listen, let me encourage anyone who's listening to this and is worried about what could happen. I'll tell you right now, I've been arrested before. It's not the end of the world. It's not fun. Nobody wants to get in trouble.
Coming from a minority, no less.
It's not the end of the world. And you know what? Like, if you were arrested for singing in church and you were put in jail for the night for singing for church, that would be epic. Yeah. Honestly, that would be something. So like, don't worry about that stuff, man. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about that stuff. Do your due diligence, maybe lift a few extra weights, the next few weeks, so you can bulk up a little bit. But seriously though, man, like this is like, don't worry about it. There's lots of worse things that could happen to you. Mm-hmm. And so sing to the Lord, man, the way he's commanded you to do. And Newsom would he arrest someone for singing at church? It's possible. I don't think he would, but it's possible. And it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Just picturing me working out. My wife's like, why are you starting to work out? I'm like, I'm getting ready for jail, baby.
I'm getting ready. Yeah. Well, it'd be funny too, because one of the things that happens to you when you go to jail is you'll get asked like, what are you in for? Because, there's a few reasons for that. Number one, like they want to size you up a little bit. And number two, they want to make sure you're not like a child molester or something. Because if you're a child molester, then they're going to beat you up. You know what I mean? They're going to get you. Mm-hmm. But if you were to, what are you in for? And you're to say, I was singing to the Lord, man. Like Governor Newsom said that I wasn't supposed to sing. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. Like, man, I don't listen. I'm not a hardened criminal, but I think you'd get some respect.
Yeah, you just might.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
And I'm pretty sure you get crowned in heaven for that.
You'll get definitely, man.
Yeah,
definitely.
You got to get one for that. But in all seriousness, I hear this all the time, and I'm actually even seeing it in the chats that you could get fined. It gets expensive. You could go to jail. And it's like, that's exactly what the Bible told us was going to happen. Like, why are you surprised when the world hates you? Like, isn't that when we take that verse out of context? I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me when I have everything or nothing. Like, we should be willing to give everything that we have from an earthly perspective to glorify God. We should be giving everything we have to be following and obeying him. And if that means we get fined for all the money in our bank account, like, don't you think that God's pleased with that? Like, don't you think that is honoring him? If you go to jail and you lose your job because you were obeying God and worshiping God and giving him glory, don't you think he's pleased with that? And like, we just need to get our mindsets right. And so many of us don't have that foundation where we are kind of living for the world in some ways, where our bank account is important to us, our 401k is important to us, our career is important to us, where those things are really hard to let go of. But we got to hold on to Jesus and not this world. And you can't hold on to both at the same time.
You know, I think I want to read one of these comments before we end, but yeah, no, look, your bank account is important. You know, you got to take care of your family. You got to do these things. We're not saying they're not important, but what we're saying is this is not your life. You know, this is not what you're living for. You know, so like, I don't want my life to be more difficult. I want my life to be as easy as possible. But at the same time, like, I don't get to choose the battles. I don't get to choose what's going on. Like, I didn't pick that social justice was going to infect the church, and I was going to have these mix of experiences in my life. I was going to grow up Puerto Rican, but with a level-headed father. I didn't pick all this stuff. God picked this for me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I didn't pick the fact that I would very politely disagree one day on a friend's, Facebook comment and post a very polite video, and I was going to get ridiculous backlash. And I was going to think to myself, oh, there's something here. I got to do something here. Because of that, I didn't pick all this stuff. Like this is God picked the battles that we're in right now. And right now the battle is, the government's telling you not to meet for church and everyone's getting woke. Those are the battles right now. And so you just fight. Listen, God made you alive today. He put you here today. He put you in the United States here, and you don't get to pick where you're born. You don't get to pick who your parents are. You don't get to pick any of this stuff. But you do get to pick who you serve, and you should choose God. You know what I mean? You should choose to serve the Lord, and do it. That's what my whole no despair thing is. Do it with all you have, and do it, minding your own business. We're going to bring it back to that, but that's what no despair is all about. Like, just mind what God said for you, and don't worry about the rest of it. Newsom will do what he has to do, but you need to do what you have to do. And I want to read this comment. Sorry, I'm talking for a bit, but
no, please.
We got a comment from YouTube. It looks like it says, "AD, I may have church discipline against me for singing in church. The session meets next week." So I don't know the circumstances here, but what he said is the session is meeting next week to decide whether to church discipline this guy for singing in church. If that is as stupid as it sounds, and I'm not saying I don't believe you, but like, it's just one sentence, right? If that is really what it sounds like, that's insane. And the whole thing of no despair for this commenter is, all you have to do is do your duty before God, and let the session do their duty. You can't control the session. You can control yourself. And so if they excommunicate you or discipline you or whatever it is that they choose to do, they're going to have to respond and answer for that. That's not your decision. Mm-hmm. You do your duty before God, and that's all you can do, man. That's all you can do. And if Newsom decides to arrest you or fine you, or if whatever, the church wants to kick you out or whatever it is, like, let them go at it, because they're going to have to respond to that. You can only answer for yourself and your family.
Yeah. And we're not responsible for the results, the good or the bad that come from it.
Amen.
We're responsible for the faithfulness. So don't even worry. Don't even think about what may or may not happen from it. You just serve the Lord. You choose today to serve the Lord. Put away the idols from over the river. Put away the idols that our fathers served, and faithfully serve him. That's your job. That's your role. That's your duty and obligation.
This is that same commenter who you put on the screen, Barry. He said it very well. This is good stuff, Barry. The duty is ours. The results are God. That reminds me of the proverb that says, we make our plans, or we plan our course, but the Lord establishes our steps. Mm-hmm. So we decide what to do, but the Lord is the one who decides what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really well put. That's a truth that we need to take with us everywhere we go, because we've got duties. That's it. We've got duties, and everyone else has duties. And just because they're breaking their duties doesn't mean that we can break ours.
Amen. Well, with that, thank you for listening. For those live, the podcast comes out Friday tomorrow. And you can join us next week, Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Love to have you part of the show. Saying goodbye for AD and myself. Have a good night. God bless.